Thank you. Just before we go to the next speaker, I misspoke a few minutes ago when I said we'd vote in 50 minutes. We actually are ahead of ourselves today, and we won't be voting on any items until about 4:40 today, just so that members know. Further debate, the honourable member for Parkdale High Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I couldn't agree more, and I couldn't support more this initiative by the member from Newmarket Aurora. I want to take the House back and those who are watching at home to a time many years ago in the life of my family when, through unfortunate circumstances, we had to euthanize our family dog. And without going into detail, let me say we tried everything else until we were forced to get to that point. Just years before that, my children had lost their father in a tragic car accident, so we were no innocents when it came to trauma. But let me tell you, the experience of going into that room and watching a beloved family animal put down, even when it needed to be done, was horrific, and we suffered for weeks. In fact, I still feel tears coming to my eyes talking about it, and that was years and years ago. Now imagine the volunteers and the staff at the OSPCA in this branch who had to put down over 100 animals. Imagine them. I was struck by the member from Newmarket Aurora looking at the OSPCA in, I think, a very, very generous way. He failed to quote, and I will because I know he didn't have time, some of the comments of the staff who actually had to do the dirty work. One said, "I'm concerned that donations to animal welfare must be funding what I see as a public relations exercise." She was horrified at what was going on. Another talked about innocent lives that could have and should have been prevented, the slaughter of innocent lives. There must, she says, with 2 exclamation marks, be another way. Imagine going home from work at a place like that. A virtual killing field, described one letter. A killing field. And then, Mr. Speaker, take this into account, that there still has not been any evidence shown that they had ringworm at all. And even if they did, veterinarian after veterinarian after veterinarian has said it's a treatable disease. And in fact, one veterinarian said that he had volunteered at the OSPCA and that had asked for the transfer of 32 so-called infected animals, 10% of the total, to their clinic for treatment, and never heard back. Free treatment, never heard back. We're not talking about one animal. We're not talking about 2 animals. We're talking about over 100 animals. And the 114 that were saved, they have also not been demonstrated to have been infected by ringworm. And think about it, even if you take the OSPCA's story, what does it say about them? That so many animals under their care were infected by a preventable disease. What does it say about their systems of hygiene? What does it say about their systems of training? What does it say about their ability to curtail such an epidemic? It's incredibly damning evidence, even if you take everything that they say at face value. Of course, you can take former CEOs' testimony too. Again, my friend didn't have the time to talk about a former CEO who wrote a letter as well, who outlined lack of adequate resources, weak leadership, lack of accountability, lack of true unity. This was a former CEO of the OSPCA. You heard from another one. This is yet another one. What do they do when they get their newfound powers under this government? Where do they go first? Not to a puppy mill, not to a dogfighting ring. They go to raid their competitors. That's what they do. I mean, one has to shake one's head. And of course, an issue dear to my heart, and I know to many that have come today, if they truly were about the prevention of cruelty and not the promotion of cruelty to animals, then they should be speaking out loudly against the breed-specific legislation that this government has brought in, under which about 1,000 animals have been killed across the province. If they really were advocates for the welfare of animals, then they should be speaking out loudly about that. We don't even hear about that. That is done under the cover of darkness, except when the good people of organizations like StopCanineProfiling.ca or the Dog Legislator Council of Canada.ca, and I urge people who are watching to read and go to those sites. If they were really concerned about the welfare of animals, they would be making that the first order of business to lobby this government to overturn that legislation that has been responsible for the deaths of animals simply because of the way they look in the hundreds across this province. And, you know, I really laud, first of all, the incredible work that the member from Newmarket Aurora has done. As he said, we each received a whole binder full of evidence. But, you know, I also have to say that this is evidence that is readily available to anybody. One has to ask why the government hasn't accessed it, why the minister responsible hasn't gone over this, interviewed these same deputants, why they haven't acted in a way that should be quite, I believe, dramatic. Dramatic before another animal is seized by these people, before another animal is euthanized, before another volunteer has to go through what can only be described as a traumatic experience simply because they want to volunteer, or where a staff person has to quit and write a letter to an MPP about what they witness going on before someone acts. This is a charity acting like a wing of the police force, a charity acting as if it were part of government, and the government, instead of supervising it and overseeing it, simply prefers to look the other way and let them go on keeping on. Unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. And I want to tell you also, unpopular. Thank goodness it's unpopular. Thank goodness the citizens of this province have risen up and speak out. I witness here all the numbers that have come down, but let's look at, you know, there's a Stop Killing Dogs site, almost 100,000 members on Facebook, supporting of my bill for, you know, Hershey's Law. There's a total of about 10,000 now, 2 different sites, and even 248 on a children's site, saying, please overturn breed-specific legislation. OSPCA, meanwhile, chugs along. It chugs along and closes shelters, even though their revenue has gone up. There's a question we might want to ask. Why is it that their reports to Canada Revenue Agency have gone from 2,270,000 2003 to 16,813,000 in 2009, and it closed North York, Oxford County, and Dryden in that same period of time? One might want to ask where the money's going. Where's the money going? It's quite horrific. I mean, what is going on is quite horrific, and what continues to go on is quite horrific. You know, it's not a week that goes by that we don't read an article about somebody's dog being seized. And quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, or somebody's animal, it's not the people in Forest Hill or Rosedale. When Animal Services raids someone's property with warrantless entry and takes an animal, it's usually because they're pretty assured that this person's not going to fight back through the legal system, because we know what it costs. We know that there are many lawsuits against the OSPCA. We know that they number the tens of thousands of dollars, and that not everyone can afford that. I think of the poor woman out in Brampton, the Portuguese grandmother who had her dog taken out of her backyard and had to fight to get it returned. What kind of agency focuses on a grandmother in Brampton when they should be focusing on puppy mills, dog fighting, all of the active abuse that's going on, and we know it is, in this province? So absolutely, I support, and so do New Democrats, any attempt to supervise what has become a very questionable enterprise. Absolutely, I support, and absolutely so do all New Democrats support, anything that will allow us to further the welfare of our animals. And absolutely, oh my goodness, do I support, and do all New Democrats support, anything that will prevent the actuality of having another family go through what we had to go through, another volunteer go through what we had to go through, another staff person have to go through what we had to go through, another CEO have to quit rather than go through what we had to go through. Horrendous. I can't imagine. And thank goodness finally. Again, the only thing I can say is I wish I'd brought it in myself. Thank you to the member from Newmarket Aurora for his tirelessness on this issue, for his research on this issue, for his advocacy on this issue, and there's no question that we will support it. The only reason that we're not all here Thursday afternoon, many of our members have gone back to their far-flung ridings. It's not a question of lack of support. If it comes to a divided vote, it's simply the reality, as we all know, about getting members out on Thursday afternoons. So here's to our dogs, here's to our cats, here's to our animals, here's to our animal welfare, and here, finally, I hope, is to supervision over the OSPCA. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Further debate?